They have already decided he is guilty. The witnesses have been paid. The verdict has been written. The seats are full, and the trial has not even started yet. This is how it works. In almost every courtroom you are about to walk into, the robes look official. The words sound holy. Someone stands and swears to tell the truth. And the whole room already knows the truth does not matter because the ruling was decided before the doors ever opened. You know this feeling. You have felt it in a room where the decision was made before you spoke. A meeting where your side of the story was a formality. A family where the verdict on you was handed down years ago, and nothing you ever do will overturn it. There is a special kind of helplessness that comes when justice itself turns against you, when the very thing that is supposed to protect you becomes the weapon aimed at your chest. The Bible is full of that helplessness. We do not usually read it this way. We read it as a book of miracles and battles and kings, but hidden inside it is another book entirely, a book of courtrooms, trial after trial after trial, innocent people in the dock, guilty people on the bench, false witnesses raising their right hands, judges who already counted the bribe. This is not a story about old laws. This is not a story about men arguing in robes over a dead man's land. This is not a story about ancient legal trivia. It is a story about every single time justice walked into a room, looked the truth dead in the face, and ruled against it on purpose. And it builds. Each trial is louder than the last. The stakes climb from one man's freedom to one man's vineyard, to one woman's life, to a prophet against an entire nation, until finally the courtroom doors open on a defendant unlike any the world has ever tried. A defendant who made the judge. A defendant who wrote the law the court is about to break. A defendant who could have spoken one word and ended the proceedings, the building, and the human race, and who chose, instead, to stand there with his hands tied and say almost nothing at all. We are going to get to that room. And in that room, a frightened Roman governor is going to ask a bound and bleeding prisoner one short question, 3 words. He is going to look the prisoner in the eye and ask, "What is truth?" And then, and this is the part that should keep you up tonight, he is going to turn around and walk out before the answer comes. Hold on to that question. We will stand in that room before the end. But not yet. First, we have to understand how human courts treat the innocent, because before God ever stood trial, he watched his people stand trial for centuries, and he was taking notes. And sometimes there was not even a trial at all. Sometimes the accusation alone was enough. Ask Joseph. He is a young Hebrew slave in the house of a powerful Egyptian named Potiphar, and he has done everything right. He has been faithful, honest, hardworking. His master trusts him with the entire household, and his master's wife wants him. Day after day, she presses him, and day after day he refuses her, until one afternoon she catches him alone, grabs his cloak, and demands that he sleep with her. He tears himself away and runs, and she is left holding his garment in her fist. And here's the terrible thing about a lie. It can use the truth as evidence. She still has the cloak. So she screams. She gathers the servants. She holds up the proof and tells them this Hebrew slave attacked her. And look, here's his garment. He left it behind when he fled. The one piece of physical evidence, the cloak that proves his innocence, becomes the thing that condemns him. There is no court. There is no defense. There is the word of an Egyptian noblewoman against the word of a foreign slave. And in that world, those two things do not even belong on the same scale. Joseph is thrown into prison without a hearing, without a witness, without a single person asking him what happened. The most faithful man in Egypt rots in a dungeon for a crime he ran away from. Remember Joseph, because his story is the first hint of something this whole video is building toward, that the God who watches these courtrooms has a way of being present in the prison cell itself. The text says it plainly. The Lord was with Joseph in that dungeon, not above it looking down, in it, with him. But hold that thought, because most of the innocent in this book are not so quietly buried. Most of them are killed out loud with the full machinery of the law switched on to make it look righteous. And to pull that off, you need to get around one specific law. There was a law written into the very heart of Israel meant to make a rigged execution impossible. It was a beautiful law. It said that no one could be put to death on the word of a single witness. You needed two. Two separate mouths, two separate stories, agreeing on the guilt of the accused. The Hebrew calls them the edim, the witnesses. And when men wanted to murder someone and call it justice, this was the law they had to defeat. So they did not break it. They bought it. They simply purchased a second mouth. Find two men willing to tell the same lie, and the most beautiful law in Israel becomes the sharpest knife in the kingdom. Watch how it happens to the next man. His name is Naboth, and all he owns in the world is a vineyard. It sits next to the palace of King Ahab, and the king wants it. He offers to buy it. Naboth refuses, not out of stubbornness, but out of faith, because the land belonged to his fathers, and the law said, "You do not sell your inheritance away forever." So the king goes home and sulks like a child. He lies on his bed and turns his face to the wall and will not eat. And his wife finds him there. Her name is Jezebel. Remember her face. She looks at her pouting husband and she says something that should chill you. She says, in effect, "Are you not the king? Get up, eat. I will get you the vineyard." And here's what most people miss. Jezebel does not send assassins. She does not poison Naboth's wine in the dark. She does something far more terrifying. She uses the system. She writes letters in the king's name. She declares a religious fast, a solemn holy day, to make everything look pious. She seats Naboth in the place of honor, and then she sends in two men, and the Bible calls them worthless men, sons of nothing, to stand up in front of the whole town and swear that they heard Naboth curse God and curse the king. Two witnesses. The law is satisfied. The form is perfect. And Naboth, who did nothing, who said nothing, who simply wanted to keep his grandfather's grapes, is dragged outside the city and stoned to death by his own neighbors under the cover of the very law that was written to protect him. The false witness is the oldest weapon in the world. Long before the sword, before the spear, there were two men willing to lie, and a third man who died for it. And the God of Israel saw every stone that hit Naboth's body. He marked it, and he sent a prophet to that household with a verdict from a higher court that would catch up with them to the last drop of blood. But here is the part that should unsettle you. That higher court, the throne room of God himself, is not safe from accusation either, because there is one being whose entire job, the Bible says, is to stand in that courtroom and accuse. And once, just once, the curtain is pulled back so you can watch him work. The book of Job opens not on earth, but in heaven, in a kind of royal court. And into the presence of God walks a figure the Hebrew simply calls Ha-Satan, the accuser, the prosecutor. And God points to a man named Job and calls him blameless, upright, the finest man on earth. And the accuser sneers. He files a motion. He says, in effect, "Of course Job loves you. You have built a hedge around him. Take it all away and watch him curse you to your face." And what follows is the most painful trial in the Bible, because the defendant never even knows he is on trial. Job loses his children, his wealth, his health, all in a matter of days, while 3 friends sit in the ashes with him and insist, like a panel of bad judges, that he must have done something to deserve it. And Job, scraping his sores with a piece of broken pottery, says one of the boldest things any human has ever said. He says he wants his day in court. He wants to lay his case before God himself and be heard. Notice what is really happening here. A righteous man is being crushed, and the accusation against him is a lie, and the only court that can clear his name is the throne of God. Keep that picture. The accuser standing before God, building a case against a good man. We will be back in that exact courtroom at the very end of this video, and the next time you see it, there will be someone standing on the other side of the man in the dock. But back on earth, the rigged trials keep coming, and the next one has a twist no one sees coming. I should tell you honestly that this next story reaches us through the Greek version of the book of Daniel, a section that Catholic and Orthodox Christians keep in their Bibles and that Protestants set to the side. I am bringing it in not as doctrine, but because it is the most perfect courtroom scene in the ancient world, and it teaches us something the rest of Scripture will confirm again and again. There's a woman named Susanna. She is beautiful, she is married, she is faithful, and she is being watched. 2 respected elders of the community, 2 judges, men everyone trusts, have been spying on her as she walks in her garden. And one day, they corner her. They tell her she must give herself to them, both of them, or they will testify that they caught her with a young man. Either she surrenders her body, or they take her life with their words. Susanna refuses. She would rather die clean than live dirty. So the elders do exactly what they threatened. They stand up in the assembly. They lay their hands on her head, the legal gesture of accusation. And these 2 trusted men, these 2 witnesses, swear that they saw her in the arms of a lover. 2 witnesses. The law is satisfied, the form is perfect, and Susanna is sentenced to death. She is being led out to be executed when a young man stands up and shouts that he will not share in her blood. His name is Daniel. Yes, that Daniel. And he does something no one in that courtroom has ever seen. He says, in effect, "You have not examined the evidence. Separate these 2 men, question them apart." And he asks each elder one simple question. "Under what tree did you see them?" The first elder, sweating, blurts out one kind of tree, a mastic tree. The second elder in another room, with no way to coordinate his story, names a completely different tree. An oak. 2 witnesses. 2 different lies. The form collapses, and the crowd that was about to kill an innocent woman turns, in an instant, on the men who framed her. Here's the part nobody tells you about that scene. It is not just a clever trick. It is the entire principle of justice in one moment. That the truth, examined honestly, will always pull 2 false stories apart at the seam. A lie needs the lights low and the questions soft. Truth can stand the cross-examination. Truth can stand the hard light. Engrave that, because there is coming a courtroom where the lights will be low and the questions will be soft, and the witnesses will fall apart exactly like these 2 elders. And yet the verdict will still come down guilty. Because in that final trial, the problem was never the evidence. We are not there yet. Now watch what happens when the accused is not a slave or a farmer or a housewife, but a prophet, a man whose only crime is telling powerful people something they do not want to hear. Start with a man named Micaiah, because his trial shows you the deck stacked as badly as it gets. 2 kings want to go to war, and they call in the prophets to bless it. 400 of them line up and tell the kings exactly what they want to hear. Go up, you will win, God is with you. 400 voices, 1 message, and all of it a lie. But one king has a nagging feeling, and he asks if there is anyone else. There is one more, he is told, but we hate him because he never prophesies anything good about us. His name is Micaiah. They drag Micaiah in, and on the way, the messenger coaches him. Everyone else is saying yes, so say yes. And Micaiah, standing alone against 400, looks at the kings and tells them the truth. You will go up, and you will fall, and your army will be scattered like sheep without a shepherd. For that, for being the one true voice in a room full of paid ones, he is struck across the face and thrown in prison and put on bread and water until the king comes back. The king never comes back. He dies in the battle exactly as Micaiah said. The lone honest witness was right, and he rotted in a cell for it. That is the cost of telling the truth to power. And the next prophet nearly pays it with his life. His name is Jeremiah, and he is standing in the courtyard of the temple in Jerusalem with a crowd closing in around him. And every one of them wants him dead. He has just finished preaching, and his sermon was not gentle. He stood in the house of God and told the people that if they did not change, God would let this temple be smashed flat, the way an old shrine called Shiloh was smashed generations before. To the priests, this is blasphemy. To the prophets on the payroll, this is treason. And the moment the words leave his mouth, they seize him, and a shout goes up. You shall surely die. Picture it. One man surrounded. Priests in their robes. Professional prophets who've been telling the king sweet lies for years. A mob with the smell of an execution already in their noses, and Jeremiah, who knows that the last prophet who said things like this was hunted down and killed by the king's own sword. This is a trial, a real one, held on the spot. The prosecution is the entire religious establishment. The charge is capital. And the strange thing is that Jeremiah does not defend himself the way you would expect. He does not deny it. He looks at the men who want to kill him and he says, in effect, everything I said, God sent me to say. Change your ways and he will relent. As for me, I am in your hands. Do whatever seems right to you, but know this. If you kill me, you are spilling innocent blood on this city and on yourselves, and then something rare happens. Some of the elders stand up, older men, men with long memories, and they begin to argue for the defense. They remind the crowd that generations ago another prophet said the same terrifying things, and the king of that day did not kill him. The king listened and disaster was held back. Why would you bring that blood on yourselves now? And it works. The verdict swings. Jeremiah walks out alive. So look at the pattern now, because it matters. Joseph, condemned with no trial at all. Naboth, killed by a perfect rigged trial. Job, crushed in a trial he never knew was happening. Susanna, saved at the last second by one brave voice. Micaiah, right and imprisoned anyway. Jeremiah, surrounded and rescued by men who remembered the past. Justice in the Bible is not blind. Sometimes it is bought. Sometimes it is rescued. It is a coin spinning in the air, and you never know which way it will land. And that spinning coin is exactly what makes the next part of the story unbearable, because we are about to meet a defendant who is more innocent than Joseph, more righteous than Susanna, more faithful than Jeremiah, the most innocent person who has ever lived or ever will. And the coin is going to land the wrong way, on purpose, every single time. Let me bring you into his courtroom slowly, because before the Son of God was ever the accused, he was the judge, and you need to see him on the bench before you watch him stand in the dock. If this is the kind of story you want more of, these threads in Scripture that nobody connects out loud, then take 1 second right now and subscribe. This channel exists to pull these patterns into the light, and the only way more people find them is if you are here. Subscribe and stay in the room. The hardest courtroom is still ahead. Here is Jesus early one morning, sitting in the temple teaching, and the scribes and the Pharisees come marching in, dragging a woman behind them. They throw her down in the middle of the circle, in front of everyone, and they announce her crime. She was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses, they say, commands that such a woman be stoned. And then they turn to Jesus, and you can hear the trap snap shut. What do you say? Watch the room. This is not really her trial. It is his. If he says, let her go, he has broken the law of Moses, and they will destroy his name. If he says, stone her, he has become a butcher, and he has broken the Roman law that says only Rome may execute. There is no safe answer. The verdict is rigged against him, no matter what he says. It is Naboth all over again. The form is perfect. The trap is closed. And notice what he does. People remember that he bends down and writes in the dust with his finger. They wonder what he wrote. But the real miracle is the sentence he speaks when he stands back up. He does not say she is innocent, she is not. He does not say the law is wrong, it is not. He says 7 words that have echoed for 2,000 years. Let the one without sin throw first. And he bends back down. And one by one, starting with the oldest, the accusers drop their stones and walk away. Because for the first time, they are standing in front of a judge who can actually see them all the way down. And not one of them can survive that gaze. When they are gone, he looks at the woman, and the judge of all the earth, the only one in that courtyard with the right to condemn her, says, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go and leave your sin." Burn that picture into your mind. The judge who refuses to condemn the guilty. Because in a matter of months, that same judge is going to be standing in a courtroom of his own, and the men on the bench are going to do to him exactly what he just refused to do to her. They are going to condemn the one person in human history who was actually completely innocent. And this is where it turns. It is night. That is the first thing wrong with it. Pay attention to this, because it matters more than you think. The Jewish law for capital trials, the rules later written down in the Mishnah, were strict and careful and humane. A trial that could end in death could not be held at night. It could not be concluded on the same day it began. It required at least 2 witnesses whose testimony agreed exactly. It demanded that the court hunt for reasons to acquit, not reasons to kill. These were good laws, wise laws, laws designed to make a Naboth impossible. And on the night Jesus is arrested, the men sworn to uphold those laws break nearly every one of them before sunrise. They take him, bound, to the house of the high priest. His name is Caiaphas. Remember his face. The court assembles in the dark, which is illegal. They mean to finish it before morning, which is illegal. And they go looking, actively hunting, for witnesses against him, which turns the whole purpose of the court inside out. They are not weighing evidence. They are shopping for it, and they cannot even get that right. Witness after witness stands up, and their stories do not match. It is Susanna's elders all over again. The lie cannot keep itself straight under questioning. The gospel says plainly that many false witnesses came, but their testimony did not agree. The case is falling apart in real time. By every rule that court claims to honor, the trial is already over. The man must be released. So Caiaphas does the only thing left. He stands up and he asks the prisoner directly. He puts him under a holy oath and he asks, "Are you the Christ, the Son of God?" And here finally Jesus speaks. He had been silent through the lies. He had not defended himself against the false witnesses. But to a direct question, under oath, he will not lie even to save his life. He says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming on the clouds." And Caiaphas tears his robes. It is a gesture of horror, of holy outrage. He shouts, "Blasphemy! We need no more witnesses." And the court, which moments ago had no case at all, suddenly has its verdict, worthy of death. Do you see what just happened? They could not convict him with lies, so they convicted him with the truth. The most honest sentence ever spoken in a courtroom, "I am," became the charge that killed him. This is not a story about a man who could not prove his innocence. This is not a story about weak evidence or a clever defense gone wrong. This is a story about a court that heard the truth, recognized the truth, and sentenced the truth to die for telling it. But the Jewish council cannot carry out an execution. Rome reserves that power for itself. So at dawn they drag him across the city to the one man who can sign the death warrant. And before we walk into that final room, there is one strange stop on the way, because the governor, hearing that Jesus is from Galilee, sees a chance to shove this awkward case off his desk. Galilee belongs to another ruler, a man named Herod Antipas, who happens to be in Jerusalem for the feast. So Pilate ships the prisoner over to Herod. And Herod is delighted. Watch this courtroom, because it is the cruelest of them all, and the quietest. Herod has wanted to meet Jesus for a long time, not to learn from him, to be entertained by him. He has heard about the miracles, and he wants a show. He fires questions at the prisoner, one after another, hoping to see a trick, a sign, a flash of the supernatural. And Jesus gives him nothing, not one word. The man who answered the high priest, who answered the woman's accusers, who answered storms and demons and death itself, stands in front of Herod and says absolutely nothing. There is no answer for a man who only wants a performance. And when the show does not come, Herod's delight curdles into contempt. He and his soldiers mock him, throw a fine robe on him to make a joke of his kingship, and send him back to Pilate. And now the road has run out of detours. If you have made it this far, do something for me. Hey, down in the comments, tell me which of these courtrooms has hit you the hardest so far. Joseph's stolen years, Naboth's stolen vineyard, Susanna and the trees, Micaiah alone against 400, the woman in the dust, or the silent man in front of Herod. I read them. I want to know where this is landing in you. Then come back, because the next room is the one everything has been building toward. But before Pilate, I want you to meet one more judge, a pagan king in a foreign land centuries earlier, who will tell you something Pilate is about to prove. His name is Darius, and he has a problem. His advisors, jealous of a Hebrew official named Daniel, have tricked the king into signing a law. For 30 days, no one in the empire may pray to anyone but the king, on pain of being thrown to the lions. And the moment the ink is dry, they catch Daniel doing exactly what he has always done, kneeling at his window, praying to his God. Now watch the king. The Bible says Darius is sick over it. He likes Daniel. He knows Daniel is innocent of any real crime. He spends the whole day trying to find a loophole, a way out, anything to save him. But here's the trap. It is the law of the Medes and the Persians. And that law, once signed, cannot be changed. Not even by the king who signed it. Darius is a powerful man caught by his own decree. And at sundown, with tears in his eyes, he gives the order, and they throw the innocent man to the lions. He spends the night fasting, sleepless, sick with guilt. God shuts the lions' mouths, and Daniel walks out alive at dawn. But mark the picture of that king, a ruler who knew his prisoner was innocent, who tried everything to free him, and who condemned him anyway because his position trapped him. Hold that image of Darius, because the next judge is going to face the exact same trap. An innocent man, a ruler who knows it, a crowd he is afraid of, and he is going to make the exact same choice. Only this time, no one shuts the lions' mouths. Pontius Pilate is not a good man. We know this from outside the Bible, too. The historian Josephus tells us he was brutal, that he provoked the people he governed, that he spilled blood without much thought. The Roman historian Tacitus, writing decades later, mentions almost in passing that a man called Christus was executed under the governor Pontius Pilatus, one of the earliest times the world outside the church wrote it down. This was not a kind judge. This was a hard, political, calculating Roman official who had killed before and would kill again, and even he can see that this case stinks. He questions Jesus, and the more he questions, the more uneasy he gets. He says it out loud more than once. I find no fault in this man, no crime, no case. By Roman law, this should be the end. The judge has declared the defendant innocent. The doors should open, the prisoner should walk free. And it is right here, in this exact moment, that Pilate asks the question I planted in your mind almost an hour ago. Jesus has just told him that he came into the world to bear witness to the truth, and that everyone who belongs to the truth hears his voice. And Pilate, tired, cynical, half a world from Rome, with a riot building outside his door, looks at this beaten prisoner and says 3 weary words. What is truth? And then he turns and he walks out of the room before the answer. Here's the thing I needed you to see. Pilate thought he was asking a philosophy question. He thought truth was an idea, a slippery thing clever men argue about and never catch. But truth was not an idea in that room. Truth was a person. Truth had a face and a name and a heartbeat and rope around his wrists. Pilate asked, "What is truth?" into the very face of the answer and walked away before it could speak. The Greek word he couldn't catch is aletheia. Truth. He was standing close enough to touch. You have done that. So have I. We have stood in rooms full of the answer and asked the question and walked out before we let it speak because the answer would have cost us something we were not ready to pay. Pilate is not a monster in this scene. Pilate is us, a man who saw the truth, knew the truth, even said the truth. This man is innocent, and then handed the truth over to be killed anyway, because keeping his job was easier than keeping his conscience. Darius wept and signed. Pilate just washed his hands, because that is what he does. He tries to wriggle out of it. He has a custom. At the feast, he releases one prisoner, whichever the crowd chooses. So he offers them a choice. And here's the choice he gives them. And I need you to feel the full weight of it. In the cells that morning is a man named Barabbas. The Bible tells us plainly what he is: a rebel, a murderer, a man who actually did the violence the crowd was afraid of, who actually deserved the cross that was waiting. Barabbas is guilty, genuinely, undeniably guilty, and Pilate stands them side by side, the guilty man and the innocent man, and he asks the crowd, "Which one do you want me to release?" And they scream for Barabbas. Stop and look at what is happening on that platform, because the entire message of the Bible is hiding in plain sight in this one image. There are 2 men. One is guilty and deserves to die. One is innocent and deserves to live. And when the verdict comes down, it is backwards. The guilty man walks free. The innocent man is led away to the cross that had Barabbas' name on it. Do you understand? Barabbas is the first human being in history to watch Jesus die literally in his place. The cross Jesus carried was the cross built for a guilty man. And somewhere in Jerusalem that afternoon, a murderer who should have been executed was standing in the sunlight, a free man watching someone else bleed on his beam. That is not a side detail. That is the whole gospel, acted out in a courtyard before anyone understood what they were seeing. He was not found guilty. He was not proven guilty. He was not even credibly accused. Every judge in the process, Pilate 3 times over, even Herod, said there was no case, and he was condemned anyway. The only honest verdict in this entire video was the true one spoken over Jesus by his own judge. I find no fault. And it was the one verdict the court refused to honor. Pilate washes his hands in a basin of water in front of the crowd, as if water could rinse a decision off a soul. And he hands him over. That is the verdict. The lowest point in the history of human justice. The author of life, sentenced to death by the creatures he made on the testimony of witnesses who couldn't keep their lies straight, by a judge who knew he was innocent and killed him anyway. And if the story ended there, it would be the darkest story ever told. But here is what almost no one notices. The trial doesn't end with Jesus. It only changes defendants. Because once you have followed a man the court's condemned, you become the next one in the dock. And the first to find that out is a young man named Stephen. Watch how familiar it looks. Stephen is preaching, and the religious leaders cannot win the argument against him, so they do what their kind has always done. They find witnesses. The text says it without flinching. They set up false witnesses. The same crime that killed Naboth. The same crime that nearly killed Susanna. The same crime that condemned Jesus, the oldest weapon in the world, picked up one more time. They drag Stephen before the council, and he does not beg. He preaches. He stands in front of the men about to kill him and walks them through their entire history. Every prophet their fathers murdered, all the way down to the righteous one they had just betrayed. And then he looks up and says he can see heaven opened and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. And they cover their ears and rush him and drag him out of the city and stone him to death, exactly the way Naboth died, exactly the way they had wanted to stone the woman in the dust. The wheel comes all the way around, and standing there, watching the coats of the men who threw the stones, nodding his approval, is a young Pharisee named Saul. Keep your eyes on that name, because the next great defendant in the Bible is that same man, or after the risen Jesus stops him on a road and turns the chief prosecutor of the church into its loudest preacher. The accuser becomes the accused. And Saul, now called Paul, spends the rest of his life being dragged from courtroom to courtroom, on trial in front of the whole machinery of the Roman world. And this is where it gets remarkable, because Paul, who had held the coats at Stephen's execution, now stands where Stephen stood, and he is not afraid. He stands before the Jewish council and turns it against itself. He stands before a Roman governor named Felix, who keeps him locked up for 2 years, hoping for a bribe that never comes, listening to Paul talk about righteousness and self-control, and the judgment to come until Felix himself begins to tremble. The judge shaking in front of his own prisoner. He stands before the next governor, Festus, and when the case threatens to drift back toward a rigged court that wants him dead, Paul plays the one card a Roman citizen can play. He says 3 words that change everything. I appeal to Caesar. And with those words, the trial that started in a dungeon in Egypt, that passed through a vineyard and a garden and a temple and a Roman courtyard, sets its course for the center of the world. Paul is going to Rome. The gospel is going to Caesar's own house, carried there, of all things, by a defendant in chains. His last great hearing is in front of a king named Agrippa, with the governor and all the fine people of the city looking on, and Paul the prisoner so completely takes over his own trial that he turns and presses the king himself. Do you believe the prophets? I know that you do. And Agrippa, rattled, gives one of the most haunting lines in all of Scripture. Almost you persuade me to be a Christian. Almost. The king walks out almost saved. Pilate walked out before the answer. Herod walked out wanting a trick. Felix walked out trembling and changed nothing. Darius wept and signed anyway. Do you hear the terrible echo? The real danger in every one of these courtrooms was never the verdict the judge handed down on the prisoner. It was the verdict each judge quietly handed down on himself and then walked away from. Almost. So let me bring it home, because there is one more courtroom, and you are standing in it right now. Remember the throne room from the book of Job? The one where the accuser walked in and built his case against a good man? That courtroom never closed. And you have an accuser. The Bible gives him a name in the Greek. Categoros. The accuser. The one who, the book of Revelation says, stands before God day and night and accuses you of everything you have ever done. And here's the worst part. He is not lying. That is what makes him so terrifying. When he reads the list of your failures into the record, the witnesses agree. The evidence holds up. Examined under the hard light, the case against you does not fall apart the way the elders' lie fell apart in front of Daniel. The case against you is true. You know this courtroom. It is the one that convenes at 3 a.m. when you cannot sleep, and the prosecutor in your own head stands up and reads the charges, and you have no defense because every word of it actually happened. You have sat in that dock. So have I. And there is no clever cross-examination that gets you out, because there is no false witness to expose. The witness against you is your own life. And into that courtroom, your courtroom, walks the one man in history who was condemned in your place. The Bible says it in one stunning word. He is your parakletos, your advocate, your defense counsel. The same word almost that he used for the Holy Spirit, the one who comes alongside. The innocent man the court murdered did not stay in the grave, and he did not stay silent. He walked back into the highest courtroom there is, and he stood up next to you, the guilty one, the way Daniel stood up next to Susanna, the way the elders stood up for Jeremiah. Only he does not argue that the evidence is wrong. He does not pretend you are innocent. He does something no defense attorney has ever done. He points to his own scars, and he says, the sentence has already been served. I stood where Barabbas stood. I carried the cross that had his name on it, and yours. The penalty this court demands has already been paid in full. There is nothing left to charge. That is the verdict that should have gone the other way. The innocent was condemned, so the guilty could go free. It happened backwards in Pilate's courtyard, on purpose, so that it could happen backwards in your favor forever. So here's where we land. 3 things to carry out of this room. The first is simple, and it is true whether you believe any of the rest of it or not. Human justice fails. It failed Joseph, and it failed Naboth, and it failed Jesus. And somewhere it has probably failed you. The gavel of this world is not the final word, and it never was. If you have been wrongly judged, wrongly accused, written off by a court of family or rumor or your own regret, you are standing in very holy company. The most righteous people in the Bible were the ones the courts got most wrong. The second goes deeper, and it is for you personally. Every judge in this story stood at a fork. Pilate, Herod, Felix, Agrippa, Darius, each one met the truth face to face and then made a choice, and the choice was never really about the prisoner. It was about themselves. What is truth? Pilate asked, and walked out before the answer. Almost, Agrippa said, and walked out almost. The most dangerous thing you can ever do with the truth is meet it, recognize it, and walk out of the room before you let it change you. Do not be a Pilate. Do not be an almost. And the third? The third is the one I want you to fall asleep holding tonight. There is a courtroom where the case against you is airtight, where the witness is your own past, where the accuser is not lying and the evidence is real. And in that courtroom, you have an advocate whose entire argument is the wounds in his own hands. He does not say you are innocent. He says the price is paid. He does not get you off on a technicality. He took the sentence into his own body on a cross, built for a guilty man, while a murderer named Barabbas walked free in the sunlight and never even knew his name. The court that should have freed him condemned him, so that the court that should condemn you can let you walk out free. So I have to ask you, the way Daniel asked the elders, the way Caiaphas asked under oath, the way Pilate asked into the face of the answer and could not hear it. Out of every courtroom in this video, Joseph, Naboth, Job, Susanna, Micaiah, Jeremiah, the woman in the dust, the silent man before Herod, Stephen under the stones, Paul before the king, which trial broke your heart the most? And which judge in this story were you most afraid you might be? Tell me below. I read every single one. The witnesses were paid. The verdict was written. The seats were full. And the only innocent man who ever lived walked into that rigged room on purpose and let the coin land the wrong way, so that yours never has to. Court is adjourned.